Hello, friends. Stephen Manning here from Integrity Ireland, SOS, Truth Matters, SOS, Stephen on Sunday. I'm very happy to say that finally I'm managing to actually record this on the Sunday, although it'll just pop up probably in the early hours of Monday morning, but that's okay, guys. Apologies for the poor lighting here. I'm in a different location and the patchy haircut. My apologies. Homemade. I'll be getting it sorted soon. Now, as usual, friends, we're going to go through a few slides. I've put aside one very short video clip, which I think everybody will find quite entertaining and enlightening in the middle of the presentation. As always, thank you for all of the support and the kind comments, and even the ones that might challenge some of the things that are being said, but as much as I possibly can, I do my best only to share what appear to be self-evident truths or information from trusted sources. We all know we can't really trust the mainstream media anymore. So let's start off. Today's title, Treaties and Tribunals, What's the Point? Digital Democracy and the Age of Wisdom. Now, those of you who follow me regularly, see some of my other presentations, some of the other platforms where we operate, will understand that I keep hammering home this notion of the original principle. Now, the original principle is represented by that, if I can get my finger right in front of the camera. Oh, yeah. Well, anyway, top right, guys, your screen. That's the symbol of the original principle, and it stands for spirit, mind, body, concept, plan, action, deity, feminine, masculine, in that order. And it's basically an archetypal symbolism that, as I say, refers to this original principle or an original idea, an original model that we were all created to embody. The fact that we're not embodying it is evidenced in all of the problems we have in society today. But obviously, that's a bigger topic. But bit by bit, I want to just keep dropping these little jewels of truth, so to speak, so that bit by bit, people will wake up. Because I'm very pleased to say that even as the diabolicals, and if you're not sure who I mean by this, I mean the so-called global elites and those in the corridors of power who are there for not for good reasons. They're still pressing ahead with plans. They're still trying to get us all controlled and locked down and injected with things that aren't good for us, and so on and so forth. They're pressing ahead. There is a big scheme, a big plan. It's all headed towards 2030, which I'm a bit surprised to note. Many people haven't made the connection that 2030 will be the 2000th year anniversary of the beginning of Christ's mission. So could that be significant? It's the same year as the scheduled Great Reset by people that I would say are not amongst the best of us in moral terms and ethical terms. Anyway, as always, guys, as we go through the slides here, I don't have another version in front of me, so I go with the flow, so to speak, but I did have them in a rough order so that they should make sense as we move through. Now, the idea here, I'll just make this one a bit bigger. 1 second, see if I can do this. The idea of digital democracy and the age of wisdom. The age of wisdom refers to the possibility, I've been talking about this for about 25 years, that humanity has entered the age of wisdom after being in the age of action. And the age of wisdom refers to Sophos, which is Greek for wisdom, which is also the feminine attribute of the divine. Okay, so it's like we're moving from the masculine through the feminine, and hopefully then eventually to the divine. Okay, that's the idea behind it. That's the process of restoration, or the reason for having religions, actually the reason for having all sorts of endeavors, science, art, all sorts of things. We're trying to recover this original principle. And I'm just, as I'm saying, I can see it, guys. I can see it in everyday events that are happening all around the world, especially the major events. I can see how it aligns to this. And what I'm trying my best to do is to show you how you can follow this pattern as well. So on to the first slide. We start with, yes, this is just the India-Pakistan conflict that's just flared up. I'm only going to say a few words about this, guys. It might be a bit obvious, but it needs to be said. Now, down at the bottom there, that's a picture of Srinagar Lake. So this is in Jammu and Kashmir. This is the disputed region. On the map over on the right there, the disputed region is the grey at the top of India there. It borders onto, I think it's Tibet and maybe even China as well. But it's an absolutely spectacular area. And they have these houseboats there. And I'm telling you this because I was there myself as a young man. And during that time, I was co-leading an expedition that went all the way from Nepal right across India, Pakistan, Syria, even we went through, was it Iraq or Iran? No, we went through Iran. That's right, not Iraq. But anyway, that interesting story for another day. But it was a very insightful trip. But this is an absolutely spectacular area up here, and but it's been in dispute between the Hindu majority of India and the Muslim majority in Pakistan. And very simply, some terrorists launched an attack a couple of weeks back. You heard about this, I'm sure, on the news. But a couple of points that need to be emphasized. Now, I don't have any quotes to show you on this, but you can please check it out for yourself. When the terrorists massacred these 26 tourists, they'd come over the border from Pakistan. They're basically being allowed, even though the Pakistani government is claiming they had nothing to do with it, they're not doing anything about these resident terrorists, if you like. Now, the important thing to note, though, is that they waded into an open meadow surrounded by mountains and everything, and where tourists were just sort of picnicking, and sunbathing and so on. And they opened fire, killed 26 of them, right? Now, what I haven't seen in many newspapers is the fact that after they'd done so, the leader of this cell, this terrorist cell, made a point of telling the surviving people, go and tell President Modi. Now, as if they weren't going to hear enough about it, but it raises suspicions, to me anyway, that this was a planned provocation designed to cause exactly what it does, these massive tensions. And I don't know how legible the screen is down on the bottom right. It might be better on your screen than it is on mine. Mine's quite small for, because I've got the other things up on it. But this explains that India and Pakistan are nuclear nations, both of them. Now, interestingly, Pakistan actually has about 10 more nukes than India, who has about 150 or so. Not that that would matter, because if anything like that kicked off up there. But there is one interesting point. If you notice right at the bottom of that green square, there's a check mark where it says no first strike policy. So India has undertaken that it won't be the first one to launch a nuclear missile. Unfortunately, if you look up there, top left in that green box, Pakistan has not undertaken the same thing. So thank God, I say, that Trump has stepped in, and whatever he's doing, and like I say, if you look at it there, he praises the leaders of the South Asian countries, these rivals, for reaching ceasefire without, whatever. But, he's showing here, yes, he comes across as a bit of a, he comes across like a tyrant. But what he's really is a no-nonsense businessman who has, I believe, the very best intentions at heart. And this might include, at times, having to, pull out the big guns and say, well, if you don't do this, and that does seem, but what's better? Well-mannered liars, like we usually have, the political elites, well-mannered liars who know how to pose in front of the cameras and lie and deceive and cheat and steal, all while smiling nicely and waving their political party banners. Or someone who's not nearly so diplomatic, but you know exactly where you stand with him. And he seems to know how to weld the power of the presidential office in a manner that is good for the world. So anyway, that's my position on it. Okay, so that's, yeah, let's hope that doesn't get any worse, and we'd say prayers for whoever's involved in the peacekeeping process there. Now we move to a little bit of, it's almost like gossip, I suppose, but this is about the migrant thing. Now, after our demonstration 2 weeks ago in Dublin, where tens of thousands of people turned out, it's just worth remembering, how can this be happening? All right, the king of Britain's migrant hotels has officially become a billionaire after amassing his fortune by housing asylum seekers for the government. Now, I've got a point to make here, guys, all right? Now, Graham King, the name of this guy, is now estimated to be worth a staggering 1.015 billion after a 35% jump in his fortune. He's getting, believe it or not, guys, from the British government, he's getting £4.8 million a day. Now, the point I want to make here is this. Look, if you were to say to me, okay, Stephen, the government's going to give you the job of housing, let's say, and forget the moral issue now about whether they should be here or not at the moment. We're going to give you the job of housing 10,000 people. How much is it going to cost? Well, honest to God, the way I would cost it is I'd work out the exact costs, and then I'd levy something extra to pay me for my time, you know. It wouldn't be 4.8 million a day, I can tell you that. It would be a reasonable amount for a skilled manager, achieving a large. In other words, I wouldn't use it to rip off the British taxpayers or the Irish taxpayers for that matter. That appears to be what this man's doing. And he's grinning from ear to ear because no doubt in his value system, he is now, quote, a success. Tell that to the girls who've been, serially raped by these migrant gangs in the UK, which, by the way, has been covered up, or at least they're doing their best to cover it up. The British government, including Keir Starmer, who, if you remember, was the sort of the Attorney General, I don't know what to call him now again, but he was the Attorney General, the Chief Prosecutor in the UK for a long time. And he did nothing to help Julian Assange in all of his difficulties. In fact, he was instrumental in helping keep him imprisoned. Not a good guy, guys. Okay, not a good guy. All right. How on earth does he become leader of your country? I don't know. So now, in context of the migration thing, what we've also happened in the UK, and again, we'll just talk a little bit about the UK, guys, because we're close neighbours. All right, a lot of our people over there and vice versa. Okay, we're close neighbours. So if you haven't been watching the news in England, this Reform Party, Nigel Farage's party, has swept the board in the councils, which has made a massive shock. And we've just got in there, laughing. The media are not good friends of Nigel Farage either. Notably, he's been over to visit Trump. They seem to see eye to eye on a lot of things. They've done their best, the mainstream media. That to me is a sign or a signal that he's probably worth more to the British people than the Labour and Conservative fools and tools that you've had in for the last few years or few decades even. But again, I'm saying the only reason to vote for a political party now would be if they've undertaken to start to dismantle the existing deep state status quo, the bureaucrats, the administrators, jobs for life, untouchables, etc., etc. And all of a sudden then, this lady, what's her name, Yvette something, she's the Secretary of State or something. I'm not sure if I've got that right. But anyway, a big noise in the British government. And all of a sudden, as soon as Reform said, the British people are fed up of the immigration, out of control immigration, we're going to do something about it. And all of a sudden, you have this lady and referring back to your man King, right? His billionaire status coincides with the government publishing its immigration white paper, aiming to cut the number of lower skilled workers. So it's sort of interesting, guys, because what we're seeing is a complete turnaround in the in the all of the world's governments following the World Economic Forum and the United Nations diktats, especially the World Economic Forum, this notion of the Great Reset, why our countries are being flooded improperly with migration. And I say that, I'm very careful to say that. I'm not a racist. I've got a lot of friends of different nationalities. I wouldn't for a minute go down that road. But there has to be common sense, no more than it's okay for me to allow people to come and live in this house with myself and my son if it puts my son in danger, okay? Or if because of doing that, we're at risk of being thrown out of our house, or if I no longer can afford to feed him, and so on. You've got to there have to be priorities, there have to be principles, and a certain amount of protectionism is appropriate. No matter how big and kind your heart is, you've got to balance it with some perspective, okay? So anyway, here are a couple of facts for you. So, oh, sorry, I'll go back the wrong way. So this was on the TV today. Apparently, all of a sudden now, they're going to reduce immigration, tighten their visa laws. There's arguments already about the Declaration on Human Rights and how reform says they're going to deport them out of the prisons, right? So let's read down the right here. First of all, it was said by one of his political colleagues that it was a great mistake that Boris Johnson brought in 900,000 migrants. Remember, Johnson was the same guy who went out to Ukraine to stop Zelensky and Putin negotiating a treaty because Johnson and his dirty colleagues, nefarious, compromised colleagues, have got vested interests, probably through the military-industrial complex and so on like that, to keep the conflict going. Secondly there, Britain has over 9 million economically inactive residents. This was one of the reform politicians speaking on the TV today, making a very valid and very, in my opinion, a very, very sensible point. If you've got 9 million people in the UK, either on the dole or for one reason or another not working, you know, and actually being a drain on the resources of the state. Well, obviously, instead of bringing in the argument, oh, we need all of these tens of thousands of migrants to come in and do all these jobs that nobody else wants to do. Well, come on, guys. You know, I remember saying this many years ago. You know, if people have committed crimes and they're in jail, don't just leave them festering, right? Find something useful for them to do. The ones you can trust, have them. And I don't mean necessarily chain gangs, but, you know, that sort of thing. See, I'm out in the community picking up litter or you know, helping with building projects if they have the skills and stuff like that. And maybe in return, reducing their sentences, you know, for each day that they work out in the community, it's a day off their sentence or something like that. I don't know, just common sense stuff. But we're not talking about prisoners here. We're talking about residents of the UK in this instance, who probably, I would argue, probably 75% of them that are currently either jobless or homeless or without a purpose, so to speak, would probably leap at the chance to take, they wouldn't, even if it was only working 2 or 3 days a week, you know, part work, part benefits, whatever it might be. These are the sort of ideas that, you know, that generate confidence and pride in your own community when you're doing something yourself to give something back, you know, even if it wasn't paid work, you know, that you know, benefits are tied to, I don't know, if you're capable and able, you know, to giving 7 hours a week or something to a local project, that sort of idea. Anyway, that's just me waffling on a wee bit, but you get where I'm going with this. So yes, so the Reform UK, there was one thing though that caught me as the man was talking, the Reform UK politician, and he said when the presenter, the BBC presenter, was being a bit provocative and, you know, sort of mocking him a little bit, but he said, what are you going to do? Get vans and drive around the country picking up, you know, coloured people basically and shipping them off? And your man said, no. He said, we'd start with the prisons. But interestingly, something jumped to my mind straight away. Well, there's a problem. I know, let's say if I was violently attacked and by a migrant and the migrant got jail time for it, only to find out that the government went to the jail a week after he was in there and put him on a plane and sent him back to Timbuktu or wherever he was from, you know. No slight on the people of Timbuktu, by the way. There has to be a balance too. That it's not, petty criminals, I'd agree. When I say by petty, but any serious criminals now, you'd have to think twice. Murderers, rapists, that sort of thing. Drug dealers, whatever. Sometimes, it might be, unless you can be assured that they'll be put in prison back where you're sending them to, then there's one of the arguments that's no doubt going to come up. There you are. I've answered for you already, Reform. You can thank me later. Okay, let's keep it popping along. So there's another slide. It's the same. UK to deport more foreign criminals and raise visa criteria. But I'll tell you why it's happening, my friends. Very similar to here in Ireland after the big demonstration of a couple of weeks ago. You're going to, the British government has got a bloody great shock. Excuse my French. British, actually, by Our Lady, originally bloody by Our Lady, actually. They've gotten a huge shock, and they've asked them, scratched their heads and gone, right, hold on a minute. How did this Reform Party win in all the council seats? And what are they saying that we're not saying? And the main thing they were saying was this immigration is out of control. That's one of the things they were harping on about. So now you have the British government just switching hats straight away, turning around like a weather vane, turning with the breeze. And now doing why? Because they want to stay in power. It's not because they want what's best for the British people. That's never been the case with these large political parties. That's not their agenda. We'll look at that in a moment, guys. What they want is to stay in power for their own benefit, on the benefit of their cronies, lackeys, and string pullers. Yeah, puppet masters. All right. So that's why you see all this switching of 1 minute, we've got to have open borders and that's an absolute, and you don't get to challenge what your government is doing on your behalf. Yeah, in England you got some excuse because you got royalty, but not in other so-called democracies. The government are there to work for us. They work for us. We pay them and we instruct them, but instead, as soon as they get into power, what do? All notions of answering to the people are dropped, and there's all sorts of deceptions and pretenses go on, while, again, they go about stuffing their own pockets and looking after their own interests. Speaking of which, this is the Irish golden visa system at the top, which very simply was, if you were rich enough, and I think, was it 15... I'm sorry about this, guys. I just made it was in my mind a few minutes ago. I don't want to say the wrong word, but it was either 15,000 or 150,000, probably 15,000, I would imagine. Anyway, millionaires have bought Irish passports, and there's a condition to this that they invest in Irish businesses. But the problem is, like you say there at the very top, Chinese investors chase 9 million lost in Trinity Investments project. We followed protocols, responds the management. Protocols, remember the heading, this title here, treaties, what's the point, for all of these, paperwork, all of the paperwork that promises this, that, and the other, because it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't apply to everyone. And it doesn't. That's the problem. So it looks like these poor Chinese guys, these rich Chinese guys may have suffered being scammed by our Irish government as well. And there, the other two little captions there, Ireland struggles to deal with migrants influx. All right. That was over a year ago. And then down a little bit lower, Ireland's migrant crisis out of control. Politicians think they own the country. So this is the problem. Politicians get in, and you remember Leo Varadkar, and Helen McEntee and the likes, and Roderick O'Gorman, and when they're confronted and said, hold on a minute, you're just bringing all these migrants, most of them, military-aged young men, sneaking them in the dark of night off buses into accommodation on housing estates or industrial estates or hotels or ex-hospitals or convents without the permission of the locals. They want to be consulted. So eventually, after a lot of pressure, and lots of people got beaten up by thug guards, those of you who are doing it, be ashamed of yourselves. They agree. Okay, we'll have a consultation process. But it's not consultation, my friends, because what they're saying is next time, instead of bringing them in a bus in the middle of the night, we'll tell you beforehand that we're going to bring them in with a bus in the middle of the night. But we're not going to ask you. We're not going to ask you, do you want them? Do you need them? Are you happy about it? No, because we effectively own the country now. That's the Irish politicians. Now, obviously they don't, but they need to be reminded of this as often and as many times as we possibly can. In Ireland, we have our own little slumdog millionaires, don't we? This is one example that I'm pointing out. Banty McEnany used to be the manager of Wicklow GAA football team, I believe. Now he is Monaghan's manager, but he's also facilitating, and him and his family have been given at least 130 million by the state to house asylum seekers. Now, the reason I have the flag down there is to ask the question, what does patriotism really mean? Because this fella, no doubt an Irish speaker, deeply rooted in the GAA culture, that's Gaelic games over here for those of you that are not Irish, deeply embedded in that, which in turn is very deeply connected to the political classes. It's a sort of a circle, but ask him the straightforward question. Is what you're doing patriotic, or are you just on the gravy train and you don't give a hoot what the effect is on Irish communities for your gross profiteering? And I say this again because I've never met the man, but I know someone he knows who he has done basically because of McEnany's activities along with the Allied Irish Bank. They put at least one other man out of business up in Monaghan, and when I started to advertise or try to support the offended party who got jailed and everything when he shouldn't have been, I got a surreptitious phone call, more or less warning and advising me to be careful, be careful who it is you're talking about, this guy up here. Be careful who you're talking about. Well, this is me being careful. So maybe it's time for you to make another phone call, Banty. Yeah, not that it was from him, but it was from someone I assume speaking on his behalf. Anyway, I can't say for sure because I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Here's another guy. Now, the reason I'm bringing this guy up, guys, and I hope you'll bear with me, there's two different sets of pictures here. Okay, so there's this guy, Paul Collins, on the left. He's another property developer who has run for the hills. He's probably over there sunning himself with the other king, billionaire king from the UK, when his asylum project went up in flames in Coolock in Dublin. Again, there's a lot being said about that lately. But the reason it jumped out at me when I saw his name, I thought, holy God, it can't possibly be, can it? This guy on the right. Now, that man on the right, I could talk about him for hours. Very simply, he is an arch criminal from the UK. He was involved in international drug smuggling and money laundering, and was instrumental in coming after me and my family for a number of years, colluded with the guards and the police to do so in all sorts of illicit and illegal ways. And eventually, we made such a fuss and a noise about it, including naming all of the judges that were allowing him to act, believe it or not, my friends, to act as an attorney in the Irish courts without any qualifications whatsoever. And they were letting him stop court cases, lying, deceiving, forging papers, It was incredible. He even had businesses in his name as a criminal who had done, serious time in the UK in Kent. He owned a shotgun. Now, we believe now that he was a snitch. He was an international snitch for the money, drug dealing money launderers. And as such, the police eventually said to him, will you shut up and stop provoking not just me, but I was one of the people who was responding by broadcasting who he was. Anyway, if you know where he is, because he has been seen recently, or at least a couple of people that know him are convinced they saw him recently. If you see him, I'd be very happy to know where he is, because we have a little unfinished business that I would like to wrap up, and it involves, it's all above board, but he won't like that. It's all above board. It's about collecting the 25,000 euros that I was offered in compensation for the lies him and his brother told. Eventually, I mean, but that's another subject for another day. Let's move on to the next one. I've got to keep pumping along. Oh, yes. Now, I showed this one last week, so all I'll do is bring it up, guys. And if you want to come back to it, you can, to freeze it. All right, maybe I'll do it this way. You can come back to it and freeze it and read it. But this is very quickly, it's identifying the personality traits that correspond to certain jobs. All right. I'm not going to say much more than that about it today. Please freeze it, come back and look at it. Okay. Sociopaths and psychopaths on the right-hand side, and empaths on the left-hand side, people who care about people versus people who do not care about people. And that brings us up now to our new Pope, Habemus Papam, as they say in Latin. We have a new Pope. Now, I want to make this point because everybody assumes, and on the assumption that he's a decent man, as Pope Francis appeared to be when he started his pontificacy. And we talked about this last week, but Pope Francis eventually realized he was not only a pastor and probably a very good man, a pastor and a good man, but being made Pope then made him the CEO of an international corporation. And he found himself in a moral dilemma. Do I respond to my conscience, which would be to look after the poor and the vulnerable, especially the children who'd been abused, or do I protect the institution? And what the point I'm trying to make, guys, and again, I'll bring this up a bit bigger for you if you want to freeze it and look at it. The point I'm trying to make is this will be the great struggle. If this is a good man, new Pope Leo XIV, if he is a good man, the problem we're going to face is that there are going to be tears and tears, as under St. Francis, of aggressive, ambitious, administrators, the bishops and the cardinals and such like. Also, there are still a very high percentage of sexually motivated predators in the pyramid of the hierarchy of the church, and they're not there because of their great Christ-like love for the world. They're not, because those people are sociopaths and psychopaths. All right. So that's going to be the great challenge, and it goes for every large organization. If you can't join a large organization without there being a trade-off between the pay packet and your own conscience and morals. Yeah, you're a very fortunate person indeed if you can work in a large organization and not be required to make moral compromises. Bit of a sweeping statement, but I go into detail on this on other days. So here we go. Another one, guys, which we covered briefly last week. I'll bring it up again, just long enough for you to freeze it. I'll leave it there for about 5 seconds, 10 seconds or so. But there are 3 necessities for evil. There's the urge to dominate, the means to dominate, which are structures and systems, and the material rewards for domination. On the other side, 3 necessities for good: an urge to nurture, which is the empathetic behavior, an individual decision to nurture, and the nurturing act is its own reward. 2 different sets of values. If you look at them, take a bit of time to look at that, my friends. Let's pop off to the next one, because yes, now this is one of my personal favorites. Let's see if I can bring myself in at the bottom left there. Yes, I can. Okay. This too is worth freezing. Actually, I'll pull myself out now so you can freeze it and save it to your computer if you wish. What I've done is broken down humanity into 3 categories, if you like. Empaths on the left, who are people with humane values and principles. Sociopaths over on the right, including psychopaths, whose value systems hinge around power, prestige, and possessions. And then in the middle, the great bulk of the people are the apaths, who are apathetic people. right? Now I'm going to bring it back up now so that I can talk to you guys. Right, here we go. So because I've talked about this before, I won't stay on it long. But this is the model. This is the sort of the original, this is the explanatory model, all right? And what would be nice if you take your time reading it and you see, all right, so the ideal thing is to be well-educated and well-informed and an actively good person. You know, that's obviously top left here. That's obviously the ideal model. Unfortunately, at the top right, you know, you've got well-educated and well-informed people again, but they're actively evil people, sociopaths and psychopaths. And then in descending order on both sides of the chart here, you see the less intelligent or less educated and well-informed people down the bottom there tend to be, like on the right, we have the liars, the bullies, abusers, and violent criminals. A lot of them are in jail, right? The clever ones are not. They're up there at the top, you know. Over on the left, the acquiescent, the vulnerable, the compliant, and the obedience, they tend to get taken advantage of by everybody else all the time, okay? And then, so you see how this works. And of course, what I'd like to posit and ask somebody to say, well, look, where are you? Put yourself on that graph or on that chart somewhere. And it's a very interesting exercise, not just to say, well, let's say, you know, I said, okay, I see myself in this particular spot over here in the blue area, right? But actually, it's not that simple, because on a moment-to-moment basis, depending on what decision we're making in the moment, you know, you might live a life that is generally very good and very honest and all that sort of stuff. But on occasions, you drift over into the right, or you're forced over into the right by circumstances where you do something that you feel a bit ashamed of or that you don't feel good about. So it's about trying to maintain a position and not being all over the place, you know. Oh, some issues I just couldn't care less about. You know, in that moment, I'm just being an apath. But we do have to be selective, don't we? I can't care about everything all the time. My head would explode, all right? So sometimes we have to be selective and accept the just judgment when someone says, you just don't care. You say, well, I'm sorry, but I haven't got the time to care about that issue because I'm so busy caring about this other issue over here, for example, you know? But it's an interesting model. Try and posit, where am I on that chart? And then where am I on the chart at any given moment in every day with my habits and my behaviors and the way I talk and deal with other people and so on. But actually, the way the world really is like this. Again, I'll leave it there for a moment if you want to freeze it. So here, what I'm really showing is that over the decades, and particularly since the Second World War, the actively evil people have been ascending up these corporate pyramids. Why? Because they're ambitious. And these corporate pyramid structures, including in large churches and charities, for instance, guys, they actually train and condition people to become sociopaths. Yeah. They don't have the same ethos as the founder or whatever. They're there to get the money. They're there to do a job. Okay. And ultimately, the actively evil people have gotten into a position where they do control all the global institutions, capitalism, communism, the banks, nation states, the media, education, health, justice and law, energy, food, sciences, and the professions. Please freeze that. Take a snapshot, guys, because that's us in the top left, the actively good people doing our best now to fight back, and we seem to be gaining some traction. I'll have to do a third slide showing the progress as we do make grounds. Now, here's another way of explaining the same thing, my friends. There's the three necessities for good on the left and the three necessities for evil. But I want to show you the symbolism here. Okay, so this corresponds, if you remember what I said earlier, on the left here now, spirit, mind, body, God, Eve, Adam, you know, deity, feminine, masculine, and it also corresponds to things like atoms, molecules, DNA, air, water, fire, you know, it just goes on and on. There's a thing I call the triadic archetype, which represents all of these. We don't have time for that today. But the symbolism at the bottom, you see there, that's the original principle, where you have the spirit binding together the masculine and the feminine, with the feminine in the superior position, all right? Superior meaning in a position where that's the right order. It's spirit, mind, body, concept, plan, action, divine, feminine, masculine. And that's in a man as well as a woman, But we're the strong, big, muscly guys. We're supposed to be using our feminine wisdom or listening to the feminine wisdom of our female counterparts before we use or engage our strength in acts of violence or whatever it might be, unnecessarily, unwittingly. Over on the right, we have the same thing, the three necessities for evil. I'll make it a little bit bigger for a minute. And the urge to dominate at the top, which is sociopathic behavior. The means to dominate, where you need structures and systems, right? There's the pyramid. And then the material rewards for domination. There's rewards for it, which is just what makes this the kingdom of hell on earth, where people are being rewarded for not being good human beings. And if you were to symbolize it, it would be there. The black indicates the absence of the light, the absence of good. And then the masculine dominates the feminine. All right. So it's sort of like a satanic masculine, which is the course of human history. We seem to be racing on a bit fast today, guys. Another slide I've shown before, this is just saying, yes, so Trump, at least, even though he's at the top of the governmental pyramid in America, he's using his position. He didn't claw his way up by learning how to be a sociopath or a psychopath. As a result, he seems to have maintained more of his humanity than more of our world leaders. But he's showing us how to dismantle the deep state from a position of power. And if other leaders catch on, the good ones, then maybe we've still got a chance of sort of breaking down these diabolical structures all around the world and bring the power back to local communities where we can start rethinking. Yeah, well, if we were living in the kingdom of heaven on earth, how would it look like? What would it look like? What would be there and what wouldn't be there? And one of the things I'm telling you wouldn't be there is the authorities. Okay? Now, before we get into arguments about it, if you think about it, there's only one authority from the spirit through your mind to your body. Yeah. Trouble is, most people. Yeah, well, anyway, that's another argument for another day. Where are we going now? All right, so there's our little friend Macron down at the bottom. I make no secret of the fact that I have no respect for this man whatsoever. He strikes me as a pathological liar. He's a sneaky little actor at best. Everything about him, his posture, the way he walks, self-important. And I just, frankly, and it might seem a bit unfair to say I just don't like him, but that's, oh, right. So, yeah, now we have a bit of entertainment coming up in a moment that involves Mr. Macron. So apparently, I don't know if you've seen it yet. I just saw it about an hour ago. There's a video circulating on the internet that makes it look like these three. So you've got Merz, the new German chancellor, on the right, with Macron and Starmer. They're on a train on the way to Kiev. I still call it Kiev. And they were surprised. A member of the press walked in with a camera, and there appears to be, as all of these articles say, there appears to be a cocaine spoon and a pouch, a drugs pouch, on the table. The drugs pouch is in front of Macron, and the cocaine spoon is in front of Merz. Now, because this is a little bit of entertaining sort of gossip type thing here, I've actually got the video for you. It's only a few seconds long. So we're going to have a look at that in a moment. But I'm convinced now, after watching it a couple of times, and I'll show you why in a moment, because the video is a little bit grainy, okay? But a lot of people are talking about that. And of course, it begs the question. Keir Starmer, ex-Attorney General of England, the Prosecutor General, whatever you call him, is he doing drugs? What does that say about their crass, gross hypocrisy? Emmanuel Macron, it doesn't surprise me at all. Not at all. So here we go. Here's a close-up, my friends. And yeah, I'll pull it right up for you. What I've done is blown up the two images on the right-hand side. This is before they thought, and they sat down shortly after this. But that article at the top there is what appears to be a pouch. Those of you that do drugs or know people who are familiar with this, but may have a better idea than me. Then at the bottom, there is what appears to be a little silver Coke spoon. It's specially designed for putting the Coke up one's nose, I am told. Now, let's get a closer look. Right, hold on a moment. So yes, at this point, now I'm going to play the video, guys. Sit back and enjoy. It's only a few seconds. Let's see if I can make Okay, so it's worth another look, friends, especially Macron, grinning as always, oh, what's that? And the way he sneaks it and folds his arms and does this and slips it around behind him. And look, I mean, are any of us really surprised? I'm not surprised at all. And I'm sure they're doing a lot worse than this out of earshot and out of sight of the cameras. Because they think they own the world. They think that they're allowed to do whatever they want. The whole point is not to get caught. It was like during the COVID. They all sit there on the stage with their masks on, getting photographs and admonishing everyone. As soon as they said, okay, we're done. As soon as they were told the cameras were off came the masks. It was all a joke. Then they went off and had parties in Downing Street and the like, champagne and fancy buns and cakes and stuff while we were all worrying about our grandparents the like, and why can't we get in to see them in their final hours and everything. And these hypocrites, these disgusting, filthy hypocrites, who have the audacity to, oh, my Lord. Right, so we'll move on now, guys. So that was the little video clip of today. Last 15 minutes or so. Right, here we go. This is it was sent to me, guys. The WHO pandemic treaty has been finalized and your government is about to vote. This treaty gives unelected bureaucrats the power to declare global emergencies, override your country's laws, and silence anyone who disagrees. Just like during COVID. One vote, one chance, your voice can stop it. Sign the petition now. So if you want to follow that link, I would be all for it, telling people to do so. Be careful. Some of these platforms try to trick you into donating money. You think the money is going to the person who's sponsoring the petition. It's not, guys. It's going to the platform that's hosting it. Okay, so I never do anymore. But if you want to add your signature, it might help. But the point, the heading of this presentation today, treaties, what's the point? These, because it's just words on paper. If they can if they can do away with the the Commission of Human Rights, which is supposed to be inviolable, they'll just get rid of that in order to do something with the immigrants. They'll do it anytime they want. They're doing it already anyway. I mean, I have a lot of experience with the authorities in Ireland who literally operate above the law. They just pretend to comply with the law, but they keep bringing in more laws. It's not for us, guys. It's for them. All of these new laws are there to serve their interests, to keep us suppressed, to keep us down, to shackle us, to stop us speaking out, to censor us, whatever it takes to stop the truth coming out. That's why we really must keep going. Right. And here we go. This is another one of their new laws that they're bringing in. And it is face masks. They want to make a ban. They've approved a ban. This is in Ireland, on face coverings at protests. Well, that's a big change around from COVID. At one time, you couldn't go anywhere unless you had a face mask on. Yeah. Now they're telling us, oh, no, you're not allowed to wear them at all. Well, I just wonder, will that also go for the guards? And there, bottom right, I know some of these guards. I could name them. We'll leave it for now. That was at an eviction. And you got them dressed there like flipping mercenary thugs brought in from Eastern Europe or somewhere, That's 5 Gardaí at the front there, and then 2 bouncers up the back. Look at them. What a way to treat the citizenry of this country. It should be obligatory on all guards never to wear a mask unless they're arresting drug dealers or such, like, those special guys like we see in the movies. That's my way of thinking. On all other occasion, guards should be absolutely 100% identifiable. They're supposed to show their badges and their names. That should happen. There should at least be a number, a clearly identifiable number, so that we know who it is that's abusing the public when they do it. Now, the People's Tribunal of Ireland, my friends. Now, I was getting prepared to spend, but you know what? I won't do it today, guys. All I'll say is that we're holding a hearing at the end of the month on the 31st in Dublin. Anybody who wants to come, we've only got about 30 public places, but it's important we do have public there, okay? We've only got about 30 places. It's an investigation into alleged solicitor negligence. Those two books on the right are two of our foundation books, which give us the right to do our own People's Tribunal. Now, I want to make this point clear, guys. I'm not going to go into detail. We'll do that next weekend instead about the People's Tribunal. I'll give you more details on it. This is something any of you can be doing in your own communities. There is a methodology to it, but we've done all the hard work for you. We've got all the evidence. We've got the laws, the Constitution, everything that gives ordinary people the right to set up their own tribunal. You don't need judges, guys. This is in the Constitution under the conditions that I'll explain fully next week, all right? You could be walking into a court before they start messing you around with a single document, a determination, we call it, from the People's Tribunal that will literally do away with the need for any lengthy hearings, adjournments for the use of barristers and lawyers and anything like that, because you'd have the question and the answer that's being posed in court, whatever it might be, already resolved and done using their rules and regulations, okay? That's the best I can do for today, guys, because I'm conscious of the time. This is, there's a hearing inquiry into alleged solicitor negligence. So it's going to be Saturday, May the 31st at 2:00 p.m. in a formal Dublin venue, which will be shared with the people who want to go. Now, if you want to go, you have to contact me, friends, okay? First come, first served. There's an email address for you, pti@checkpoint.ie, all right? Let me know if you'd like to be there. The hearing will be videoed and will be put up in online, and it's for those of you, particularly people who might be interested in doing this in their own communities. Let me know. You can come, and we will have time after. It'll take about 40 minutes, the hearing itself. After that, then it's social time, and we can explain to you then in more detail how the process works, all right, and have papers and stuff for you to look at. All right, guys, so please let me know if you're interested, and first come, first served. I'll check my emails on a daily basis. All right. If you have my phone number, it's no big secret anymore, or I'm on WhatsApp, let me know, friends. Okay. It's in Dublin on a Saturday afternoon at the end of the month. Now, I'm going to start doing this every week, friends, and I think I'm down to the last couple of slides here. So what I'm going to do is every week I'm going to name someone or some organization or someone I believe is worth listening to. Now, this is not to say that I agree 100% with everything they say or do or don't say or don't do, all right? But I'm sort of putting a spotlight. Last week, it was on Mick Brazil, also known as the Irish Git, yeah? Previously, it was Steve Kerr and Suzanne Delaney from the Irish Inquiry. And I hope to just every week just do this one slide. Please look these guys up. They do get access in, and they're able to get in. And believe it or not, there's some politicians now trying to stop them gaining access into the politicians because they embarrass them with some of the questions they ask. But the questions are all decent, square questions. They do need some support. I think they're only asking for, I think it's €2.50 a week, €2.50. Something like that. But if you don't know who they are, friends, please check them out. If you do know who they are, this is me without any prompting from them whatsoever. I haven't been asked to do this, but this is me saying, I know Fatima, for example. I had an interview with Fatima. You know, we've met 2 or 3 times. Very decent person too. But this is me just saying, if you think like I think, and if you're fed up with corrupt authorities running the show, then support these guys, all right? Because I think we saw the other day Paul Murphy and Ruth Coppinger. Disgraceful. They were put questions and they just were not speaking to Gript. And the other journalists, God bless them, and give them credit here, guys, couldn't see them. One was from the Mirror, the Irish Mirror, I think, a girl, and then another man, I can't remember who he was with, But both of them said, well, basically, if you're not answering Ben Scallon's questions, we've got nothing to say to you. And the interview collapsed. Good for you. It's nice to see a bit of ethics and not letting these these unscrupulous politicians have it all their own way. Yeah. Yes, it was actually. That was almost the last slide. So, and we're on time, which is nice, friends. You'll have enough time to even go and get a cup of tea if you want at this time of the night, or a little glass of wine. This is the other platforms where we share information. I've noticed actually steadily. I'm a bit surprised actually. Let me just pull myself up for a minute. I'm a bit surprised actually that more people aren't going over and looking at Rumble. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but I do have two platforms there, and I have a feeling they've sort of gotten mixed up. For some reason, people aren't seeing but it doesn't matter. I think if you go and put my name in over on Rumble or Integrity Ireland, or I can't remember which titles. But anyway, this slide here, for those that are interested, if you're on these other platforms, we have stuff sort of spread out all over the place. TikTok, for example, I only use it to field AI generated snippets of, like, say, this video now. It'll make about 10 little short snippets. Some of them are worth watching, some of them are not. And I just pop them up there, I just physically don't have enough time to do much more than what I'm doing at the moment. I put links up where I can: Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, X, and then Instagram I'm going to use as a sort of a teaching platform and use it mainly for slides, and so on and so forth. But anyway, one thing at a time. Can't do everything all of the time. So that's where you can find us if you're interested, friends. Those are some of the books that I'm pushing and asking people to educate yourself so that you too can be part of the revolution. Okay, when it comes. Say the revolution. By that, I'm not insinuating anything bloody. As a matter of fact, that's the probably the most difficult part of knowing some of the things I know, and having experienced some of the experiences I've had at the hands of the so-called authorities. The easy way to get satisfaction would be to resort to, to being like they are, to resort to the negative. We can't do it. The only way we're going to defeat them properly and over an extended amount of time is by disengaging from them, disempowering them, and focusing instead on what is good and what is right and what is true. Building communities and families around this original principle instead of these diabolical pyramid structures. And maybe from there, and it's in the back of my Crisis Color Coup book, a vision of the future. It's not perfect, but an idea. Some of the things that would be there, definitely, and some of the things that definitely wouldn't. If we start getting that right in our minds, remember, concept, plan, action. If we get the concept right, then we can start thinking and comparing that future that would be good for our children versus the reality that we're living in now. And how do we transition from one to the other? And I would say one of the first things we have to do is stop voting in sociopaths, psychopaths, career liars, and moral deviants into positions of power, to stop funding them, to stop working for them, to stop marrying them, maybe, we've just got to start to enforce what are, in effect, good, honorable principles, ethics, and scruples. God bless everyone. Thank you again for your time and attention, and almost certainly next week it'll be 7 o'clock. And if I can hammer it, I'm going to try my best to get it out at 7 o'clock on Sunday so that I can say with some real authority, Stephen on Sundays. All right. God bless everyone. Thank you again.